My name is Chris Rolls. I am the music editor or associate editor for mp3.com. I run a small record label in San Francisco called Kimasiotic Records. I'm also in a music group called Flange. Well, I'm here interviewing artists. I'm in your position for the majority of the day, talking to a variety of artists, A-list and baby bands as well. Well, some of the content we actually just got live today on the website. We did an interview with Talib Kweli at the Warner Showcase. So that's live. So we're trying to do a hub showing people what South by Southwest is about. I mean, since it's generally been an industry event, but more and more of the public seem to be catching wind of it and coming down, we wanted to provide a really nice slice. And then afterwards, we'll be doing sort of a huge montage of all the artists that we talk to and street scenes and what have you. Well, I used to work in the bubble era of the .com industry, and I worked for a company called Listen, and they were acquired by Real. I was laid off. I took some time off to do music label stuff and tour with a variety of bands. And then I decided to get back into it when I heard that mp3.com was being revived by CNET, and I reached out to a few people there and actually came on doing just simple data production work and began writing a column called Rolls Off the Tongue, which is my last name, and it was just sort of a summary of weekly events and what have you in music, and that expanded into writing about albums as well, and they seem to trust me. So now I'm in the hot seat, interviewing artists, doing podcasts with artists as well, and hopefully more video content and growing from there. Yeah. I think it makes it a lot easier to interview people. In fact, I find that it requires significantly less research. If you know what it's like to be in a studio or to deal with record labels in general, eating ramen on the road for a month, that sort of thing, it really helps to take people, well, it doesn't really take them by surprise, but it generally relaxes the musicians once they catch wind of the fact that you're not just some sort of observer, standing from the outside with no personal experience. I'm not a musician. Like, I can't actually sit down at a guitar and play or write music. I got into music by doing found sound and environmental recordings. I'm really interested in atmospherics and creating fake realities through music. So I used to do a lot of things like that, like pulling sound sources from different places, environmental recordings, and then recreating new environments out of that. But really, to answer your question, I've just always been fascinated by music. And when I was in high school, I had a community, or I had a show on a community radio station in Tucson, Arizona called KXCI. And really, I just knew from sort of that point on that in some way I would be involved in music. And I always have been, whether I was just washing dishes and then going home and working on some small cassette project that maybe 5 people would listen to, or actually, getting 2 bands out on the road and really exposing what I consider to be interesting music to young children. But that's kind of actually what drives my label, is the idea that, there's a 13-year-old kid out there that's going to listen to my music and it will inspire what they do. It actually began as a collective effort. There were a group of musicians in San Francisco in the late 90s. We were all doing experimental electronics, and there were about 8 of us, and we started recording a lot of material over a 9-month period and playing a lot of shows as different artists. We would change the name of the group all the time, and sort of this experimental electronic supergroup. And we had all this great material and nothing to do with it. We had it up on the original mp3.com at the time, but I wanted to really get it out. So I just got the money together and pressed up, a double 12-inch vinyl record and put a stamp on it and thought that that would be it. That was my one sort of vinyl contribution to the world. And then I started getting approached by bands locally in San Francisco about putting out music, and now I'm 14 releases deep, and worked with a few artists that have gone on to major indies. Well, that was .com money at the time, but I've done it with no job, and working as a carpenter or washing dishes, whatever I've needed to do in order to get the music out, essentially.
It's a personal investment then?
Absolutely. I'd say that about 60% of my income actually goes towards some sort of music-related, thing, whether that be putting money back into the band that I work with, or promoting artists on my label, or building websites for other people. Yeah, and mainly vinyl releases, which takes a lot of money. Well, it's funny that we're talking about this, because I had a huge discussion last night with a friend of mine. I have one last vinyl project for this group called OCS out of San Francisco. And they're actually on Narnak Records out of New York. And I decided just the music itself needed to be on vinyl. I think vinyl is pretty much obsolete. It's obviously an enthusiast market. You really have to fetishize vinyl in order to buy it. But I do it, I suppose, because as a child, holding a record was such a tactile and intimate experience. And I think that that's something that digital music really robs people of. Sitting and really opening a gatefold and staring at the artwork and thinking about what went into it, and reading production credits and all that sort of stuff. And that's why I continue to do it, and I work with artists that still romanticize that experience. It goes back to the old saying, like, we want to put out a record. Everybody still says we're putting out an album. We're recording our record. And it relates to this technology that is not outdated. We watch these ephemeral technologies come and go. CDs, I think, are the best example right now. As we move into, a completely digital landscape, they just become this form of transportation for music, whereas with a vinyl piece, I can, pull out something from the 20s and put it on my turntable, and it sounds great, and it'll last the rest of my life, Unlike my hard drive crashing, and there goes everything in my iTunes. It's called La Flange de Mal, which is a take on Le Fleur de Mal, and it started, I was in a project called Ziekenbach Kauf, which was this sort of faux gay German techno group. We'd thrash around on stage to incredibly distorted bass and hurt ourselves a lot. We actually were on tour with this band from New York called The Liars for a little bit in Europe, and we ended up wounding ourselves in a hospital. And I came back, and I had all this time to record, and I just suddenly, it started as a project in order to record drum sounds, drum loops, for something else I wanted to do. And then in 2 weeks, I just finished this album, and then it caught the attention of a few other people in SF, and we decided to do one live show. And now it's been 3 years, and we play really, I think, good sort of experimental prog rock stuff. But we try to be very conceptual, too. We use video and costumes at times and things like that. Very political, Dadaist lyrics. Yeah, it's fun for the kids, really. Well, I have a day job, so touring isn't really something I can do a lot of. We did go out on the road last year for a full month, and there's some talk of going to Europe, and right now we're just recording a new album, and we've got some interest from publicists and what have you, and I don't know, maybe taking it up to the next level, whatever that may be. We have a very sort of staunch anti-capitalist in our group who's disinterested in doing anything with major labels, so we're trying to navigate the waters on that one. Well, personally, I believe that artists should control their own releases. The technology is available now, and the distribution is available online and through various other sources. Personally, I feel that some artists should avoid working with major labels. It's difficult, it's really a decision that each individual band needs to make, and it's obviously based on their needs and desires. A lot of people would like to go the major route and get the support and the money and to be able to tour and do larger shows and arenas. But really, I think it's about artists and bands gauging exactly where they'd like to go with their music. You have bands like Friends Forever that tour in a small Volkswagen van. They don't actually play inside venues. They show up and they have their own sort of pyrotechnics and they go crazy with fireworks and lights and, they're a mobile party. And that's all they want to do. And then you have another band like the Lovemakers out of Oakland, and they want to be big, that's what they want. So I don't know. I don't really have a personal feeling. I don't think, the machine is the beast, so to speak. It doesn't have to be. But I think that once you start accepting a lot of cash, you have to be careful because it can definitely compromise your vision, your integrity. That's my only concern. I'm really fascinated by recording processes and songwriting and people's inspirations. Not the sort of standard, what albums did you listen to when you were a child, but more what's happening in their own lives, what drives them to do what they want to do. And ultimately, I like to show the very human side of musicians, and I tried to do that. For example, we do a podcast on mp3.com called Great Albums, where we get to bring musicians in and talk to them about 5 of their favorite albums. And it's that sort of interview that I really like to go for, because inevitably it brings out a lot of other discussion and what have you. I just don't really like sitting down and talking to people and presupposing that they're this star that's unapproachable, and that they're inhuman in some way. So I just try and feel for what people are saying and explore whatever avenues open up during the interview, and not just simply ask, so you want to be big? That's great. mp3.com, a website that is finding its footing, I think, right now. There was this site, this entity known as mp3.com before, which was probably one of the most entertaining sites available on the web, where I could go and hear anything from anyone. And now it seems to be evolving into this resource, really, for people to be able to come and find truly compelling content about an individual artist, whether that be video or maybe an exclusive audio track, or, like I said, one of our podcasts or our own in-house produced video interviews. I think it's just a really great place to find information about bands and maybe stumble upon additional content as well. I don't really know what the future of music distribution is or how to get it to the end user. Yes, I think it's much more practical than purchasing track by track, like an iTunes situation. I would much rather pay $8 a month and have access to anything. Why not? It's like a public library. I still go to the public library. Not a lot of people do that anymore either. But yeah, I think it works. Just a little background, I started at Listen as a web surfer, and in 6 months I was managing their data importation system. This was before they actually even knew that they wanted to create something like Rhapsody. Rob Reed, the owner, definitely had this idea that he wanted to create this giant stereo in the sky, but I don't think it was really a reality. In any event, my involvement was that I helped to create the encoding process. So I worked internally and externally, getting content in and basically getting it into the database and working with our database administrators to create all the proper tables so that we could import everything and make sure the album art was available and production credits and all that stuff. Yeah. I think San Francisco is the hotbed musically in this country, and I always get called pretentious for saying that. And when I'm on tour, people never want to hear it. Yeah, I'm so sick of you San Franciscans talking about San Francisco. But it really is this huge open culture with such a wide variety of musics, and everyone supports one another and seems to be in each other's bands. And it doesn't matter if you're playing, singer-songwriter acoustic stuff or you want to do full costume academic noise. People will come, and they will come to your show, and they will support you. And if you suck, they will tell you so. But I think it's the best place to be, besides maybe like Bergen, Norway, or something like that. Just to do it, really. I think that, people live in fear, and I'm no exception to that. But ultimately, I just believe that if you really want to create music, you just need to create music. And there's a great quote from this gentleman named Genesis Peorage. I don't know if I can actually call him a gentleman anymore because I think he had sexual reassignment surgery, but he was in this band called Throbbing Gristle in the late 70s, and he said that the future of music it lies in amateurs, hands. And I believe that. I believe that, especially now with technology to the point where it is, anyone and everyone should create music. If you just want to create a song for a child, to say happy birthday, do that. If you really think you could be the next David Bowie, go ahead and do it, I think ultimately that would be my advice.